Let's jump right into this explainer because today we are going to fundamentally shift how you approach the digital SAT reading section. If you've been treating the SAT purely as a fact-finding mission, you are likely working way harder than you need to. Today, we're unpacking Erica Meltzer's masterclass on reading for function, and we're going to transform how you look at the text on your screen. It's time to move from being a passive reader to an active, strategic thinker. So the absolute single most important question you must ask yourself to master rhetorical reading is this: why is this sentence here? Seriously, the SAT is absolutely an argument comprehension test. It isn't just about finding that one hidden detail, right? It's about seeing the architecture of the passage. You have to ask yourself, why did the author choose to put this specific sentence exactly here? What role is it actually playing in the grand scheme of their argument?
Here's our playbook for today. We're breaking this down into 5 essential sections: the why, not what, context is king, main point versus purpose, the first sentence rule, and finally, playing positive and negative.
All right, starting off with section 1, the why, not what, shifting your mindset.
Okay, so the crucial first step is that you must transition your mindset from passively absorbing literal facts, the what, to actively understanding how an author constructs an argument, which is the why. Rhetoric is literally the art of persuasion. So reading rhetorically means really understanding the function that various pieces of information play. Is a sentence there to support a claim? Is it trying to refute a counterargument? Or maybe just provide an example? You really have to see the mechanics behind the words. As this quote brilliantly points out, the SAT not only tests the ability to comprehend what is written, but also why it's written. Function questions demand that you move beyond the literal meaning to grasp the text's larger purpose. Sure, you can't understand function without understanding content, but understanding content alone, that just isn't enough anymore. You always have to ask yourself what the author is actually trying to accomplish with that specific piece of text.
Moving right along to section 2, context is king, navigating question types.
Now, you're going to encounter 2 very distinct ways the test asks these function questions. Some are solvable by spotting a key transition or phrase right in the exact line provided. For instance, a word like but halfway through a sentence might be a dead giveaway that the function is to highlight a contrast. However, and this is a big however, other questions absolutely require you to read the surrounding sentences to find the answer. A line reference tells you where the information is, sure, but it doesn't always tell you its relationship to the rest of the passage.
Because there's really no way to tell upfront which category a question falls into, you've got to automatically execute these 3 steps every single time. Step 1, find the line. Step 2, back up and read a sentence or 2 before it. And step 3, read a sentence or 2 after. If you just sit there and stare at the reference line, you might completely miss the point. Very often, a reference sentence right in the middle of a paragraph is just supporting a main point that was stated in the sentence before it. If you don't back up, you're literally flying blind.
Next up is section 3, main point versus purpose, knowing the difference.
Now, this is where a lot of test takers get tripped up. The main point is the actual concrete argument the author is making, while the primary purpose is the abstract rhetorical goal. What do I mean by that? Well, the main point of a passage might be that a specific inventor was inspired by a specific tool to create the computer mouse, but the primary purpose? That would be phrased much more abstractly, something like to describe the inspiration behind an invention. You have to be ready to map those specific facts to broader abstract function verbs.
Let's look at this essential formula for finding that main point. It's actually super simple. You just take the topic and add the question, so what? For example, if the topic is dark matter, the so what is, why does the author think dark matter is important? Finding the structural spine of the text completely prevents you from getting bogged down in minor, confusing details, and it makes finding the overall purpose a whole lot easier.
All right, let's dive into section 4, the first sentence rule, finding the purpose fast.
Here is an incredible shortcut for you. Because digital SAT passages are just so incredibly short, we're talking often around 100 words, authors do not have time to warm up. They typically introduce their big picture goals right out of the gate in the very first sentence. So, if a question asks you about the purpose of the passage as a whole, that opening line is absolutely your best friend. You can often find your answer right there in that first line. But, as the golden rule goes, trust but verify. You want to read that first sentence closely, form your hypothesis about the primary purpose, and then lightly skim the rest of the text. You're really just making sure the passage doesn't take a sudden, unexpected turn on you.
To put that into perspective, just look at how extracting a tiny phrase from the first sentence can lead you directly to the correct answer.
In this example from the source text, the first sentence mentions that a certain advantage of dinosaur skulls is hardly self-evident. Well, think about it. If something is hardly self-evident, it's unclear, right? It's a mystery. And that directly links to the correct answer choice here, which describes the purpose as illustrating a puzzling trend. You didn't even need to overanalyze the whole passage, because that first sentence basically handed you the key.
And finally, we arrive at Section 5, playing positive and negative, a strategic trick for elimination. This strategy is a massive time saver. Matching the general tone of the passage to the tone of the answer choices can often eliminate one or two wrong options immediately. Often, the function verbs in the answers, like explain or describe, are pretty neutral, but the rest of the phrasing will lean either positive or negative. So if your passage is generally highlighting a really positive discovery, you can just instantly cross out answer choices that contain negative phrasing, like limits or less complex.
You also absolutely need to watch out for extreme trap words. Unless the author's being highly aggressive or definitive, extreme function verbs are almost always incorrect. Words like prove or substantiate are usually way too strong, mostly because these passages are just suggesting or discussing theories. Similarly, words like undermine or discredit are often way too aggressive unless the author is actively tearing down someone else's work. Instead, what you want to keep an eye out for are more moderate, common function words. Look for things like qualify, bolster, or concede.
Okay, one final piece of advice. Worry about what the author is actually saying, not what they might be trying to say. You need to be as literal as you possibly can. Honestly, this is where so many smart students trip up. They try to find these profound hidden meanings, but you must never interpret or imagine information that isn't explicitly right there on the page. The SAT doesn't want your creative interpretation. It just wants to know if you can accurately identify the structural function of the words exactly as they're printed.
So with this playbook in hand, you are fully equipped to look at any SAT reading passage and immediately uncover exactly why the author put those words on the page. By shifting your mindset from the literal what to the rhetorical why, checking your context, relying on that first sentence, and eliminating those extreme or off-tone answers, you are completely in control. So as you head into your next practice session, I'll leave you with this. Are you just collecting facts? Or are you finally ready to decode the argument? Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and happy studying.